want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, unless you're driving. If you're driving, please keep them open.
Right. Good point.
But just for a moment, conjure up an image of a strong leader, a cinematic leader, maybe from a boardroom drama or a war movie. What do you see?
I see motion. I see noise.
Exactly. They're standing at the head of the table. They've got the marker at the whiteboard.
Always.
They're articulate. They're decisive. And when a problem comes up, they don't flinch. They just lean in. They seem to have an answer for everything.
And they usually look great doing it.
They do. They look like the absolute model of success. If you were just looking from a distance, you'd say, wow, that is maturity. That is leadership.
But today I think we're going to ruin that movie for you.
Just a little bit, because we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating piece that suggests that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, those exact traits, the ones that look like strength, are actually what cause a team to slowly, quietly disintegrate.
It's what the source material calls the paradox of visible strength. That's the core idea.
And before we get into it, I just want to be really clear about the tone here. We are not talking about the obvious villains.
Oh, not the boss who throws a stapler or embezzles money. Those are easy to spot.
This is about something the source calls erosion.
Erosion, yeah.
That's such a specific, almost geological word. Why that word?
Well, think about the difference between a landslide and erosion. A landslide is, violent. It's immediate. Everybody sees it.
Right, it's obvious toxicity.
Exactly. Erosion is just wind and water wearing down a stone over years and years. It's so subtle, you might not even notice it's happening until you walk into a room one day and realize the entire landscape has just completely changed.
And the really scary part is, the leader causing this erosion often thinks they're doing a fantastic job.
Oh, absolutely. They think they're building a mountain, but they're actually wearing it down.
That's the real tragedy of it. It's not usually about malice. It's more of a misunderstanding of what leadership is supposed to feel like versus what it's supposed to look like.
So let's break down that illusion. The source talks about this equation of visible strength. It argues that most organizations, they use a kind of faulty math to figure out who's in charge.
We rely on visibility.
Right.
Who talks the most, who presents the deck.
Who resolves the argument, yeah. And because we use those visual cues, we subconsciously buy into a few, let's say, false equations.
The first one being confidence equals competence.
Right.
Now, I have to push back a little on this because, look, if I'm getting on an airplane and the pilot comes on the intercom and sounds, shaky or unsure,
right,
I am going to be terrifyingly uncomfortable.
Don't we need leaders to be confident?
We do.
Yeah.
We absolutely need confidence. But the key is to distinguish between the performance of confidence and the reality of competence. The trap is when we assume that just because someone is loud and sure and fast with an answer,
but they must be right. Exactly. The person who speaks first and loudest often sets the anchor for the entire conversation. We just assume they know the most, but often they just have the least inhibition.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's the speed and the volume we mistake for accuracy. What about the second part of the equation?
This one is, I think, even trickier. We mistake conflict for courage.
Oh, this is the table slammer.
It is. It's the leader who is always willing to argue, who loves to play devil's advocate. And we see that and we think, wow, they are so brave. They're really fighting for the best idea.
But you're saying that's not actually courage.
A lot of the time it's just aggression. Or maybe just a habit. Real courage might actually be sitting quietly and listening to someone else's idea without needing to jump in.
But that doesn't look like courage.
No, it looks like passivity. That's the visibility bias again. If I'm quiet, I look weak, even if I'm doing the hard work of listening.
Okay, and the third one, the one that you said hits the hardest.
We mistake survival for resilience.
Unpack that for me, because if my team goes through some brutal crunch time, we deliver the project, and we're all still here. Aren't we resilient? We survived.
But at what cost? That's the question. Just because a team is still standing doesn't mean it's healthy. It might just be enduring.
So they're surviving the leader, not just the work itself.
Precisely. Resilience implies you bounce back stronger. Survival just means you haven't quit yet. So a leader burns out their team to hit a quarterly target. The visible metric says success.
Project's done.
But the invisible metric, the erosion, says 3 of your best people are now quietly updating their resumes.
So if this is the culture, if we're rewarding the loud, the combative, the survivors, What actually happens to the room? What are the symptoms?
Well, the first big symptom is what the source calls the quiet room.
The quiet room. I feel like I've been in this room.
Oh, yeah. Describe it. What does it feel like?
It feels heavy. The leader asks a question, like, any thoughts on this? And there's just this pause,
A long pause.
a really long pause. And everyone is just looking down at their notebooks or checking their watch. It's not that they don't have thoughts. It's that they're waiting.
They're waiting for the monologue.
Yes. They know the leader's going to fill the silence anyway.
And that is the erosion. See, it's not that people are lazy. They've learned a behavior.
Yeah.
They've learned that their input is going to be ignored or talked over or maybe corrected, so they just retreat.
Which I assume leads to the second symptom, the polished idea.
Yes. In these cultures, you stop seeing messy ideas. You just stop seeing rough drafts.
Which on paper sounds good, right?
Yeah.
I only want high-quality work.
It sounds great, but you have to ask why it's happening. If people are only bringing you polished, bulletproof, totally defensible ideas, it means they're afraid.
They're filtering out anything risky.
They're filtering out the weird, innovative stuff because they don't want to get shot down.
So the work just gets safer. It gets narrower.
It gets boring. Innovation requires vulnerability. You have to be able to say, hey, I have this half-baked thought. It might be stupid, but... And in a culture of visible strength, that sentence is dangerous.
And that all leads to the final stage, disengagement,
The checkout.
the quiet quitting.
It's the really talented people who just realize, I can't win here. I can't actually influence things. So they stop trying. They just execute the task. They become mercenaries.
And to the leader, this can look like compliance.
Yeah.
Look, my team is doing exactly what I tell them to.
Look how aligned we are. But it's not alignment. It's submission.
Okay, I want to get really practical here, because it's easy to say, don't be that person. But how does this show up in a conversation? The source has this great section on when ideas become power signals.
This is the real mechanics of collaboration. It's about how a leader handles a new idea from someone else.
And the distinction is between building versus replacing.
Exactly. So let's role play this for a second. Give me an idea for a project, anything.
Okay, let's say we're planning an office party. I say, I think we should do a taco truck this year instead of a formal dinner.
Okay. Now, a building response would be something like, oh, I love that. Tacos are fun. What if we also got a margarita machine to go with it?
Okay, that feels good. You took my idea and you added to it. We're building something together.
Now, here's the replacing response, the visible strength leader. You say, let's get a taco truck. And I say, I hear you, but let me reframe that. I think what we really need is a culinary experience. So let's look at a high-end food hall setup.
Ugh, let me reframe that. I felt that in my stomach.
Right. It sounds so smart. It sounds like I'm elevating the idea. But what did I actually do?
You stole it. You killed my taco truck and you replaced it with your food hall.
I engaged in what the source calls status management. I just needed to be the one who shaped the final idea.
And I have to be honest, I've done this. Read this made me cringe because I've used that phrase, let me play devil's advocate, or I like that. But here's how I would tweak it.
We all do it. It feels like we're adding value. We think, I'm the leader, my job is to improve the work. But if you do it every single time, the team learns the safety filter.
It just.
Don't bother bringing the taco truck idea. Just wait for the boss to tell us which food hall we're going to.
And creativity dies.
Exploration dies. Because real exploration means the leader might not have the best idea in the room. And for a certain type of strong leader, that is a terrifying thought.
This connects to another concept from the source that I found really profound. It's called selective empathy.
This is the heavy hitter.
The argument isn't that these leaders are sociopaths. They have empathy. It flows in a specific direction.
It flows upward, toward power.
Give me a concrete example. What does that look like?
Okay, picture a high-level VP. Let's call him Mark. Mark's under a ton of pressure. Board meeting coming up, numbers are down. So in a meeting, Mark just snaps. He yells, he interrupts, he belittles a junior staff member's presentation.
All right.
And afterward, what do his peers say?
They say, oh, Mark is just under a lot of stress. Or, he's really passionate.
He means well, he's just intense.
Yeah.
We rationalize it. We empathize with his context, the pressure he's under.
We interpret his intent.
Exactly. But now look at the downward flow. Look at the junior staff member, let's call her Sarah, who just got yelled at.
Sarah's probably in the bathroom crying. Or just completely shut down.
And how does the organization talk about Sarah? Do they say, wow, she was publicly humiliated, of course she's upset?
No. They say, she needs to toughen up.
She lacks resilience. Maybe she's not cut out for this kind of environment.
Wow. So Mark's aggression is passion, but Sarah's reaction is weakness.
That is the selective empathy gap. We judge the person with power by their intent. He wants to win, and we judge the person without power by their behavior. She is crying.
And the source makes a really critical point. No one sits down and decides this is how it will be.
Yeah.
It's systemic.
It is. It happens because in most companies, outcomes, money, product launches, that's the God we worship. Mark represents the outcome. Sarah represents the human cost. And the system is built to optimize for the outcome and just ignore the cost.
Until the erosion happens, until Sarah quits, and then the next Sarah quits, and suddenly Mark's standing in an empty room wondering why no one wants to work there.
Exactly.
This brings us to the behavior that often drives all of this, which is centralization. Because I can hear leaders listening right now thinking, but I have to be involved. I'm responsible for the quality.
Yeah.
If I don't step in, it won't be good enough.
This is the hero trap.
The hero trap.
The intention is almost always good. The leader feels this deep sense of ownership. They want to protect the team from failure. So what do?
They rewrite the deck at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
They take over the client presentation. They make every single final decision.
They centralize all the visibility on themselves. And when you do that, two things happen. First, the leader burns out. They become a bottleneck, working 80 hours a week because no one else can do it.
Which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
See, I have to do it. Look how busy I am.
Right. But the second consequence, the one for the team, is that you are stealing what the source calls public confidence from them.
Public confidence. I like that phrase.
You can't learn to be a leader in the dark. You have to stand in the light. You have to be the one to present the work, to take the heat, to answer the hard question. If the boss always swoops in to save the moment, the team never builds that muscle memory.
You're just teaching dependency.
You are erasing future leaders before they can even form. You're keeping them as children, and then you complain that nobody on your team is stepping up.
Well, you never let them stand up.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty grim picture here. The erosion, the silence, the hero trap. If that's the visible strength model, what's the alternative? We still need to get things done.
The source offers a really useful framework here. It distinguishes between three terms that always get confused: aggression, assertiveness, and authority.
Okay, let's break those down.
Aggression is what we've been talking about. It creates motion. It relies on pressure. But crucially, the source notes that aggression needs an audience.
It's performative.
Totally. It's chaotic, and it relies on fear to work.
Okay. Then there's assertiveness.
Assertiveness just creates clarity. Here's the deadline. Here's the standard. That's neutral. It's necessary.
But the holy grail here is authority.
Authority creates trust. And the key difference, I love this line from the source, is that true authority does not need an audience.
What does that mean, practically speaking?
Think about a great parent. Not the one who screams at their kid in the grocery store. That's aggression. Think about the parent who can just give a look or speak in a calm, low voice, and the child listens. Why?
Because there's a relationship. There's trust. The kid knows the parent means what they say.
Exactly. Authority is secure. If I have real authority in a meeting, I don't need to prove I'm the smartest person there. I don't need to win every exchange. I don't need to reframe your idea to make it mine.
Because your status isn't threatened by my good idea.
In fact, my status is enhanced by your good idea because I'm the one who created the environment where you could have it.
That's a huge shift in mindset from I have to be the source of all brilliance to I have to be the gardener of the brilliance.
And here's the trade-off. This is why it's so hard for companies to choose this path. Aggression is fast.
You yell, people move.
Fear is an incredibly efficient motivator in the short term. If you want a great quarter, hire an aggressive leader. They will squeeze every last drop out of that lemon.
But the lemon gets destroyed in the process.
Right. Authority is slow. Building trust takes time. Listening takes time. Letting your team present and maybe stumble a little, that takes time.
But it scales further.
It builds an ecosystem. It builds a team that can function when you are not there. A team that tells you the truth when you're about to drive off a cliff. Aggressive teams don't do that. They just let you drive.
The yes man culture.
And yes men will watch you fail because they are too afraid to warn you.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm thinking about the listener. Maybe they manage a big team. Maybe they just manage an intern. Maybe they're just trying to manage themselves. What do we do with all this?
The source leaves us with a really provocative thought. It says we need to stop asking the shallow question.
Which is, does this leadership style work?
Right. Did we hit the numbers? Because honestly, the answer is often yes. The toxic, visible strength style does work. on paper.
So what's the deeper question?
The question beneath the question is, what kind of people does this style quietly teach others to become? Every single day, your behavior is a lesson plan. If you're aggressive, you are teaching your team that aggression is how you survive. If you micromanage, you're teaching them dependency is safe. If you're silent, you're teaching them disengagement is the smart move.
It's not just about the product you're building. It's about the people you're molding.
Exactly. Are you teaching them to be thoughtful, courageous, autonomous, or are you teaching them to be fearful and compliant?
And I guess the final question is that the organization we consciously choose to build?
It's a choice. It is always a choice. But you have to be willing to look past that movie star image of leadership to actually make it.
Well, on that note, I think we all have some reflecting to do. I certainly do. I'm going to try to retire. I'm going to reframe that from my vocabulary this week.
Start small.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We hope this gave you a new lens to look at your meetings, your bosses, and maybe even the person in the mirror.